Hi, everybody. This is Dr. David Perrodin, and welcome to Best Practices in School Safety, brought to you by Sprigeo, the nation's leader in online bullying, harassment, and threat reporting software. So, grooming, child grooming, is a very frightening term, and today we have an expert with us, and a person who has gone in depth, has investigated this, Hector Solis. Hector, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you shared a statistic with me, which was also pulled from an interview that you conducted. And I'm going to read that right now because a lot of people, when they think about child grooming, and we're going to work to clarify some of these terms, predator, child grooming, trafficking, what these mean. But, okay, in a recent interview about human trafficking, expert Dottie Laster estimated that only one of 80 to 100 cases is reported due to traffickers being meticulous at hiding their involvement with victims. Hector, that's less than 2%. That's frightening.
Yes, it shocked me as well. In the interview that I had with her, I actually posited an estimate, and I said, so if you had to guess, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6 cases that she encountered were reported, and she corrected me and she said 1 out of 80 to 100, and that floored me. And after she walked me through why that was possible, it makes perfect sense. These groomers, traffickers, predators that are trying to get these kids exploited, they are 1 or 2 or 3 degrees separated from the actual situation. So what you end up seeing is a child being arrested for prostitution. And that's where it stops. And a trafficker can just as easy leave that one and go get another one. So the child as well that has, especially the ones that have been groomed, they will not report against their trafficker for the reasons of loyalty. They're in fear. There's coercion that's happening as well, where frequently these traffickers, they will stalk and survey the families of these people that are being exploited. And they hold that against them. They remind them, they'll show them pictures frequently of their family doing day-to-day things to let them know that they have easy access to them to hurt them if they don't follow whatever the instructions are of the trafficker.
I listened to some of the podcasts that you did, some of the interviews, the investigation, which was exceptional. I'm going to share those links out. And Hector, what stuck with me is I thought this was something doesn't happen in my community, doesn't happen down the street from me. And you were sharing stories of very typical families where a child might be in the same room as the parents on the computer and has this adult friend, which is telling the child what the child wants to hear. Like, yeah, you know, you don't need to do your homework. You're getting good grades. So your parents are giving you a hard time for nothing. Might be saying, yeah, you deserve these things. I'm going to send an Amazon gift card, or I'm going to leave an Amazon gift card somewhere for you. And as I shared this information with graduate students in a course that I'm teaching, and these individuals will become administrators in schools. Some of them already hold those positions. They were shocked too, but then some of them did share, yes, I mean that this is happening. And the part that we want to work on today is this isn't part of school counseling curriculum. Schools don't know what to do with this. Parents don't know what to do with this. It was uncomfortable just a couple years ago to have the first, all assembly at night and welcome parents in to talk about the internet and internet safety. And this goes so much deeper. It's a very delicate topic. A lot of people don't want to get into it, but we have to get into it because this is a matter of life and death. So Hector, tell me about your research and some things that stood out for you that right now, as a school principal, as a school leader, I need to hear.
Well, you mentioned at the beginning that I was an expert, and the extent of my expertise is that I'm an expert in my children and from the lens of protecting my family. And so this time last year, I was in the same boat as many people are right now, in that I was not really aware. I mean, I kind of knew what was going on, but I didn't really know the extent or the depth of how dangerous this situation is. And so for about 6 to 8 months, I went in and I did a deep dive research into child sex trafficking that led me eventually to the grooming, which is much more scary and much more subtle and so under the surface that we don't realize it's everywhere. And so what I found in the grooming series that I did was that the language that I was expecting to see was not anything where you could pick out any one or two sentences and say, that's grooming. It's the progression over time and the subtle discussions. And as you mentioned in the intro, it's the telling of the kids what they want to hear versus what they need to hear. And as parents, there's no way we can win against that. There's just no way, because you're always fighting an uphill battle. We need to, as parents, in order to teach our kids, and even people at the school level, they're also doing the same things that the parents are, where they're telling the kids the things that they need to hear versus what they want to hear. And what these groomers are doing is they're pinning that against us, the people that are trying to do good for the kids. So what I tried to say, or what I'm trying to do now and implore this in my life, is I'm trying to get out in front of it. You know, we talk about awareness, and the name of the podcast is Awareness Podcast, but really awareness is not enough. We need to turn that awareness into action. And it's only doing that that's going to help us prevent some of these things that are happening, or at least anticipate some of the grooming situations that are happening. Because as you heard in some of the episodes that I released, once the grooming takes hold, even if the kid is aware that they're being groomed, they don't believe it. They just can't believe it, because they've established the relationship with the groomer and the trust is so deep. And at that point, the groomer has already deteriorated the relationship between that kid or that adult, because I have an episode where an adult was groomed as well, and their family members. And so what I'm hoping that the school administrators do is they get out in front of it. They teach the kids about online safety. That's number one. We start there, because that's something that's safe. That's something that kids are exposed to nowadays. And then two, you start to talk about what the dangers are. And then what are the warning signs? What are the danger signs that the kids need to be aware of? And then we need to go a little bit deeper and say, all right, this is what it looks like. Because if you just explain something to somebody and they don't believe that it's really dangerous, especially when you tell a kid, do you know that if you share a picture online, that is a target for groomers? They're not going to believe it, because they share probably tens of 20s of pictures online with their friends daily. It's a common occurrence. And they're going to have thousands upon thousands of instances where nothing has ever come of sharing a photo or a video. But all it takes is that one or two groomer to catch the eye of that person, or to catch let me rephrase that. All it takes is one groomer or one predator to see one picture, and then from there on, they've got them. So we need to teach them what it looks like, what are the dangers, and then we need to also explain to them what are the possible outcomes. And in my mind, I like to equate it to crossing the street. You know, you don't just let your kid go and figure out how to cross the street, right? Because it's very dangerous and it's deadly. So you want to take them up to the street, you explain to them that you look both ways, and then you explain also that if a vehicle comes and you don't look both ways, here are the potential consequences. You can get struck by the vehicle, you can get hurt, you can get paralyzed, those kinds of things, right? You explain the extent of what the situation is you're teaching them. But in order to do that, you have to have that experience of knowing how to cross the street, what the potential dangers are. So it's very important for school officials, parents alike, to understand what the warning signs are and the full extent of what the dangers are, so that they can teach their kids appropriately.
Thank you. And Hector, we arrived at some questions to empower counselors and teachers. And I'm going to go through those right now. because these are questions right now that are not asked in schools. So these are questions which can start to surface possible concerns, where then you can get in deeper and deeper with questioning and explaining and try to identify if there's possible grooming behavior. So I'm going to go through these.
Yeah.
So the first one, what do you know about the internet? What do you know about the internet? Do you use privacy setting on your apps? Help me to understand how the privacy settings work. I looked into this, and some of them are very complicated, many steps. And then, of course, they're always changing. How many adult friends do you have online? Do you communicate with adult friends online? Do you share pictures of yourself with your online friends? And I'm going to come back to that one in just a second. Have you shared pictures or text that your parents might not approve of? And are there any adults not considering your parents that you trust completely? Now, I'm going to back up into the, do you share pictures of yourself or with your online friends? And you were sharing with me, when we think of sharing pictures, the immediate thought is an inappropriate picture, like sexting or something like that. It could be a picture where you are standing in front of a concert venue and the name of the concert is up on the sign, and the groomer can look at that picture and say, okay, I know that building, I know that city, I can research this concert, I know other songs by the band, and all of a sudden can put together this whole collage and then take on the persona of, I'm a teenage boy, I'm a teenage girl, whatever. I was at that concert. Wasn't that awesome? It was a great night. It was warmer than it was supposed to be. I mean, all of this backstory that they can generate through, looking up the weather, looking up how many people were there, some of the songs that were played, some of the reviews of it. And suddenly this person is communicating with who they perceive it has some common knowledge, and this is a friendship. Oh, this person was at the concert with me. What section were you in? Yeah, I was close to that too. That was really great. And your guard goes down, and yet this could be somebody who is a 45-year-old predator from 4 states away. And now suddenly that information is out there. So I think that's also important when we talk about this, is it's not this image of sharing explicit photographs, of course, which is very dangerous to do, but it can be photographs which do have identifiable information. And you brought this up to me, Hector. I mean, if we had pictures, any pictures, we're looking at, and you scrutinize those pictures, you can identify locations, because what do kids post? Here's a trip I did to this. Here was my outing here. Here was whatever. Here's a movie that I saw. So it's those things which are very benign, but it can definitely put together a picture and a dialogue and a narrative. And so I'm going to get into our call to action here in just a moment. But in one of your stories, something that sends chills down my spine. And I live in Wisconsin, so there's vivid imagery in this. You talked about a girl that left her house and walked out. It was snowing outside, walked out the front door, and she didn't have her jacket on, but her friend was stopping by to meet her. And this friend was a predator who had been grooming her. And she leaves the house without her parents knowing, works her way down the driveway and still isn't fully sure, has this feeling of, I probably shouldn't be doing this, but this person is a friend. We've communicated a lot, and is just about to turn and go back into the house, and hears her voice called by this friend. And through a sudden, turn of events, she's grabbed by the wrist. She's told to be quiet. She's put into a car. She's threatened, and she's driven
4 hours away.
4 hours away, right?
Yeah.
4 hours away, and she's talking about, she can look out the window and she sees street signs which are familiar, and then suddenly signs that she doesn't recognize and places she doesn't recognize, and just thinking, terrified, and then also thinking, how am I going to share this with my parents if I do get away? Like, that also they're not mad at me. And I think that's the part that it is really important as school administrators and having this discussion, that if anyone finds themselves in this situation, or that they are being threatened, like, if you say anything, I'm going to harm your parents, or I'm going to harm your relatives, that you need to come forward, and parents to have that safe discussion of that it's okay if you tell me that. I'm not going to be mad at you, and counselors to tell kids, nobody is going to be mad at you. You didn't do anything wrong. Right. We are here to help you. So I think those, and these are questions that will be available that we just talked about. And it took us a while, Hector, to put these questions together.
Yes.
Because there isn't a bank of questions out there. And the other part, and here's my call to action to school administrators, and we'll kind of wrap it up here. Principals, work with your counselors, go through these questions, incorporate these questions into your counseling curriculum, and with teachers, and maybe use these during homerooms, during advisory. And then also ask the students how they would report, how they would let people know if they felt uncomfortable with a relationship that was happening with an adult. Like, I'm getting texted too many times by this adult and it feels weird. Or my friend Sarah is seeming to, not go out with us much, and she's always has her phone, and she's kind of very secretive, and we ask her what's going on, and she says, like nothing, and it's no big deal. But yet, like, we know this, or we know, that she had something sent to her, like some gift card or something. Because as you indicated, part of the barrier of this reporting is the child is going to be frightened in a lot of cases, and that they're going to be in trouble, and their parents are going to be upset with them, or that they've let down other people, when it's like, no, we've got to get beyond that. And working with kids, finding the words, sitting down with them and saying, how would you let us know? How would you, even if it's not you, but it's your friend, how would you let me know as a counselor, or let your parents know that something's not quite right? We just want to check this out. And I think that is going to be organically driven by the school and by those discussions with kids. So that's not where I want to plant a set of words here, because I don't know if there is a set of words. I think it's very specific to whatever comes out of that conversation with the kids in the region that they're in, and how comfortable they feel with the adults. So that's my call to action with the principals and counselors. Use these questions. And Hector, you've done a phenomenal job with your episodes with grooming and with human trafficking. I'm going to link those out. And then these are great questions to cultivate that discussion and start to get more feelers. And you gave some resources too. One is Thorn, and one is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, where people can go a little bit deeper. So as we close this Sprigeo Best Practices in School Safety, what would be your final words about, child grooming?
I would say, especially to school administrators, because they're with their kids about 8 hours of the day, and then we've got them the rest of the time. So we really need to establish a collaborative effort to keep our kids safe. And part of this, as it relates to grooming specifically, is the child that is being groomed typically doesn't know that it's happening, because they're in a world where they're getting everything that they want and that they need. So if they need devices, the predators will send them devices. If they need money, they'll send them online gift cards. It's so easy nowadays to transfer money electronically and the parents not be aware. So what they'll need to do, especially in the schools, and the counselors, they're going to be the front line to this, is they need to be perceptive when a student comes to them and says, you know what, my best friend that I've known since elementary has started to distance herself from me. She's now talking to her best friends, are now online. That is a red flag, because two things are happening there. She's being, the person that's in question here is being socially isolated from the people around her. And the other thing is she's establishing deep connections with someone online. And there needs to be some sort of investigation or check with the parents to make sure that they are aware that that is happening. And a lot of times parents aren't aware. Technology is changing so fast. Just when you think you've got a grip on the apps that are out there that predators are using, 2 more have popped up, 10 more have popped up. And so keeping up with this pace is exhausting. So we need to leverage every possibility that we've got. And that means the community, including the schools and the people around the children.
Thank you so much. This is going to be very helpful. And again, this is a challenging subject to get into. And schools don't know that first step to take. This document, what we've just talked about, that's the first step for schools. Thank you so much, Hector. And thank you, everybody, for listening to this installment of Sprigeo Best Practices.